poor boy screamed at the billionaire. "Mom said you are my dad." The billionaire was dumbfounded when he knew the truth. The late afternoon sun cast a golden glow over the towering Carter Financial Group building, its glass facade gleaming against the city skyline. Employees bustled in and out, expensive suits and polished shoes clicking against the pavement. And then a child's voice sliced through the air, stopping everything. You're Nicholas Carter, aren't you?" Nicholas Carter, the man who owned half of this city, froze mid-step. A moment ago, he had been focused on his next meeting, his next deal. But now, he turned, his cold blue eyes landing on a small, ragged-looking boy standing directly in his path. The boy was thin, dressed in worn-out clothes, his sneakers scuffed, his cheeks slightly hollowed. But what struck Nicholas the most was his eyes. Brown, fierce, and full of determination. Before Nicholas could speak, the boy took a shaky breath and yelled the words that shattered the world around them. "Mom said you're my dad." A collective gasp rippled through the people around them. Nicholas's personal assistant, Richard, paused beside him. Employees stopped walking, turning to stare. Even the security guards hesitated, uncertain whether to intervene. Nicholas stood completely still, staring down at the child as if trying to process the absurdity of what he had just heard. His child? Ridiculous. His voice was cold, clipped, and dismissive when he finally spoke. "I don't know who you are, kid, and I certainly don't know your mother." But the boy, he didn't back down. Instead, he clenched his fists, his lower lip trembling, but his gaze never wavered. "You're lying," he shouted. "Mom would never lie to me. She told me the truth. She told me you left us." Something inside Nicholas shifted at those words. He hadn't expected anger from the boy, or pain. For the first time, Nicholas really looked at him, at the messy brown hair, the sharp cheekbones, the way he stood his ground, defying a man 5 times his size. Something familiar flickered in Nicholas's chest. But he pushed it down. "I don't have children." His voice was firm, absolute. The boy's eyes glistened with unshed tears, but he still refused to back away. "You don't even remember her, do you?" he whispered, his voice shaking. "My mom, Emily Dawson." Nicholas's stomach twisted. The name, it hit him like a slap. Emily Dawson. A name he hadn't heard in nearly a decade. For a brief second, a memory surfaced. Soft laughter, a warm touch, a whisper of love that once felt so real. Then, nothing. Just an empty space where she had disappeared. And now, standing before him, was a boy claiming to be his son. Nicholas's pulse quickened, but he masked it with cold indifference. "This conversation is over." He turned to walk away. Nicholas had barely taken 2 steps when a small hand grabbed his sleeve. He stopped instantly. Not because of the touch, but because the boy's voice cracked when he spoke again. "Please." Nicholas turned his head slightly, his jaw tightening. The boy was fighting tears, trying to be strong. "Please don't walk away from me again." The words hit harder than they should have. Nicholas didn't understand why, but for the first time in years, something inside him hesitated. And that hesitation, it was the beginning of something he wasn't prepared for. Nicholas Carter was not a man who lingered on the past. The past was a distraction, a weakness. But that night, as he sat alone in his penthouse office, staring at the city skyline, he couldn't stop thinking about her name. Emily Dawson. It had been 9 years since he last heard it. 9 years since she had vanished from his life. And now, a child with her eyes had stood before him, accusing him of abandoning them both. Nicholas should have dismissed it, should have let it go. But something unsettled him, and Nicholas Carter did not like being unsettled. "Find everything you can about Emily Dawson," he said. Richard, his assistant, barely hesitated before nodding. "Yes, sir." Within hours, Nicholas had a file on his desk, and as he opened it, his entire world tilted. Emily hadn't disappeared into luxury the way he once believed. She wasn't off somewhere, living a comfortable life, spending another man's money. No, she was in a rundown apartment in a struggling neighborhood. She worked 2 jobs, a waitress during the day, a hotel cleaner at night. She had no social life, no family, and she had spent the last 8 years raising a child who, according to every record available, had no father listed. Nicholas clenched his jaw. This didn't make sense. Emily had been the love of his life, and then one day she was gone. No explanation, no goodbye, just disappeared. And for all these years, he had believed one thing, that she had betrayed him, that she had chosen someone else. But now, now Nicholas wasn't so sure. Nicholas leaned back in his chair, exhaling sharply. Memories of Emily flooded back, hitting him harder than he expected. Her laughter, bright, effortless, like a melody he could never forget. The way she used to challenge him, never intimidated by his wealth or power. The nights they spent talking until dawn, making plans for a future he thought was certain. And then, nothing. She had walked out of his life without a trace. Nicholas had spent months in rage, convincing himself that she had been just like everyone else, that she had only wanted his name, his money, until she found a better offer. But now, as he stared at the photos of a tired, overworked single mother struggling to provide for a son who had his eyes, doubt crept in. Had he been wrong? Had Emily really left him by choice? Nicholas stood abruptly, shoving the file aside. There was only one way to get answers. Emily Dawson owed him an explanation, and Nicholas Carter was going to get it. The neighborhood was nothing like the places Nicholas Carter usually found himself in. The towering penthouses, luxury townhouses, and high-end hotels he frequented felt like a world away from this rundown part of the city. His expensive car stood out of place on the cracked pavement, and as he stepped out, he felt the weight of the stares from people passing by. But he didn't care, because inside that worn-down building, in a cramped apartment, was the woman who had haunted him for 9 years, and she owed him answers. Nicholas stood in front of apartment 4B, his jaw clenched. He raised his fist and knocked firmly. Seconds later, the door opened, and there she was, Emily Dawson. The woman who had once been his everything, the woman who had disappeared without a trace, the woman who, even now, still took his breath away. She froze the moment she saw him, her blue eyes widening in shock. Her hand gripped the edge of the door, her knuckles turning white. Nicholas. His name left her lips like a whisper, filled with emotions he couldn't read. But before he could react, Emily's expression hardened. Her grip on the door tightened, her body shifting as if she were ready to slam it shut. Nicholas stepped forward, stopping her. "Emily, we need to talk." Her lips parted slightly, hesitation flickering across her face. But then she straightened, her voice firm. "There's nothing to talk about." Nicholas let out a sharp breath, his frustration boiling. "Don't lie to me, not after what happened today." Emily's jaw tightened. "I don't know what you're talking about." Nicholas took another step forward. "A little boy stood in front of my office today. He said you told him I was his father." A flicker of panic crossed her face, and for Nicholas, that was all the confirmation he needed. Emily's silence was his answer. His voice was sharp, demanding. "Is he mine, Emily?" She swallowed hard but said nothing. Nicholas's patience snapped. "Answer me." She let out a shaky breath, then lifted her chin. "You don't have the right to ask me that." Nicholas's eyes burned. "The hell I don't. If he is my son and you've kept him from me for 8 years. Emily flinched, turning her gaze away. Nicholas took a deep breath, trying to keep his emotions in check. Her hands trembled slightly, but she forced herself to meet his gaze. And Nicholas stilled. A sharp, unexplainable pain shot through his chest. "What did you just say?" Emily exhaled shakily. "You were never supposed to find out. You were never supposed to care." Nicholas's eyes darkened. "You think I wouldn't care? That I wouldn't have looked for you if I knew?" Emily let out a bitter laugh, shaking her head. "You didn't look for me, Nicholas. Not once." The accusation hit hard. Nicholas's mind reeled. "I thought you left me." Emily's breath caught. "I thought you chose someone else," he admitted, his voice raw now, filled with emotions he never let himself feel. Emily swallowed hard, then whispered, "That's what they wanted you to think." Nicholas's entire body went still. A chill ran down his spine. "What?" Emily met his gaze, and for the first time that night, he saw the truth in her eyes. The truth he never knew. The truth that had been kept from him all these years. And for the first time in his life, Nicholas Carter felt something close to fear. Nicholas Carter had spent his life believing that Emily Dawson had abandoned him, that she had chosen to leave, that she had walked away without a word, without looking back. But as he stood in her tiny apartment, watching the way her hands trembled as she held on to the past, he realized he had been wrong. Horribly, devastatingly wrong. And now he was about to hear the truth, a truth that would change everything. Emily took a deep breath, her fingers curling into fists. "You think I left you because I wanted to?" Nicholas swallowed, his jaw tight. That's what it looked like. She let out a soft, bitter laugh. Of course it did. That's exactly what they wanted you to think. A chill ran down his spine. Who? Emily's gaze burned into his. Your family, Nicholas. Your mother. The words landed like a punch to his gut. That's impossible. Emily's eyes flashed. Is it? Then tell me, Nicholas, why didn't you ever find me? Why didn't you ever ask why I left? Nicholas clenched his fists. I thought you had... He cut himself off. I thought you had chosen someone else. Emily inhaled sharply, shaking her head. I never did. Nicholas's pulse pounded in his ears. Then, why did Emily look away for a moment, gathering herself? When she spoke, her voice was softer but filled with years of pain. Your mother came to see me, Nicholas. His breath caught. She told me I would never be good enough for you, that I was nothing more than a distraction. Nicholas's entire body went rigid. Emily continued, her voice tightening. At first I didn't care. I loved you. I thought we could fight for each other. But then... She swallowed hard, looking up at him. She threatened me. Nicholas's blood turned to ice. What? Emily's lips trembled. She said she would destroy my family, ruin my father's business, make sure I had nothing left. And if I still refused to leave, she would make sure I regretted it. Nicholas took a step back, as if the weight of her words had physically knocked the air out of him. He remembered how suddenly Emily's father's company had collapsed, how there had been scandals, lawsuits, bankruptcy, all happening right after Emily left. At the time, he thought it was a coincidence. Now, he knew better. His mother had destroyed her life, and he had let it happen. Emily's voice broke through his thoughts. I had nothing, Nicholas. She took a shaky breath. I tried to fight back, but I lost everything. My family, my home, everything was gone. Her hands shook at her sides. And then I found out I was pregnant. Nicholas's breath hitched. I had no money, no support, no one to turn to. Her eyes were glossy with unshed tears, but she held herself firm. So I did the only thing I could. I survived. Nicholas felt like his heart was being ripped out of his chest. He had spent 8 years thinking she had betrayed him, but she had been fighting to survive, with his child, their child. And he had never known, never been there. Never once thought to question the story he had been told. A sharp, suffocating guilt crashed into him, so intense it made his knees weak. He had been so blind, so damn blind. And now, oh now, he had to face the one person responsible for all of it. Nicholas didn't waste a second. He drove to the Carter estate, his childhood home, a place he hadn't stepped foot in for years. When he stormed into the grand foyer, his mother, Victoria Carter, looked up from her seat in the lavishly decorated parlor. Her lips curled into a slight smile, but Nicholas could see the sharp calculation in her eyes. Nicholas, she greeted smoothly. What a surprise. I thought you were busy running the empire. Nicholas didn't sit, didn't waste time. He threw the truth in her face. You destroyed her life. Victoria's smile didn't falter. Ah! She exhaled lightly, as if the conversation bored her. So you finally found out. Finally. Like she had always known this moment would come. Nicholas's blood boiled. Why? His voice was dangerously low. Why did you do it? His mother sighed, setting her teacup down, because she was never meant to be part of our world. Nicholas's hands curled into fists. She was mine to love. Victoria's expression hardened. You are a Carter. Your life is not ruled by love. It is ruled by legacy, by power. I did what was necessary. You stole my son from me. Nicholas's voice thundered through the room. For the first time, his mother's expression faltered. Nicholas stepped closer, his entire body trembling with rage, betrayal, and disgust. You didn't just destroy Emily. You destroyed me. His voice dropped. And you made sure I never knew I had a child. Victoria lifted her chin. If I hadn't intervened, you wouldn't be where you are today. Nicholas laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. And what exactly do I have, Mother? He met her gaze, his eyes cold. Haunted. Because right now, I feel like I have nothing. His mother stared at him. For the first time, she had no response. Nicholas took a step back, his voice quiet but full of conviction. You are no longer part of my life. Victoria Carter's lips parted slightly. Nicholas, I have a son. I have a family, and I will spend the rest of my life making things right with them. He turned away, his entire body rigid with fury. He had lost too much time. But he wouldn't lose another second now. His focus was clear. He was going to fight for Emily, for Liam, for the life that had been stolen from him. And this time, no one would stand in his way. Nicholas Carter had built an empire. With his hands, his mind, and his ruthlessness, he had conquered industries, crushed competitors, and amassed power beyond imagination. But now he was facing his greatest challenge. And it wasn't in a boardroom. It was in the eyes of a woman who no longer trusted him, and in the heart of a little boy who wanted nothing to do with him. Nicholas had resources beyond belief. So his first instinct? Fix things the way he always did. He bought a house, a beautiful home in a safe neighborhood with a big yard for Liam to play in. He arranged for the best doctors, the best schools, anything Emily and Liam could ever need. But when he showed up at Emily's apartment with the documents, her reaction stunned him. Take it back. Nicholas's brows furrowed. Emily, I'm trying to help. She crossed her arms. Help? You think throwing money at us will erase 8 years of pain? Nicholas clenched his jaw. I'm trying to do what's right. No, her voice was firm. You're trying to do what's easy. Nicholas stilled. Emily shook her head, her voice softer this time. Liam doesn't need a rich father, Nicholas. He needs one who actually cares. Her words hit deeper than he expected. Money was all he had ever known, the one thing he could control. But here, with Emily and Liam, it meant nothing. And for the first time in his life, Nicholas Carter didn't know what to do. If winning over Emily was hard, winning over Liam was even harder. Nicholas tried to spend time with him, to take him out for ice cream, to talk to him about school. But Liam was distant, cold. Every time Nicholas tried, the boy would shut down. One evening, Nicholas walked Liam home from school. He looked down at him, trying to find the right words. Liam, I know I wasn't there before, but I want to be here now. Liam didn't look up. It's too late. Nicholas felt a sharp sting in his chest. It doesn't have to be. Liam finally looked at him, his small hands curled into fists. Where were you when Mom had to work 3 jobs? His voice cracked. Where were you when we had nothing? Nicholas's breath hit. He had no answer because the truth was, he had been nowhere. And now his son resented him for it. And maybe he had every right to. Days passed, weeks. Nicholas refused to give up, but he didn't push. He showed up every day, and then one day, everything changed. Nicholas had just left a meeting when he got a call. Emily? Her voice was tight, panicked. Nicholas, it's Liam. Something happened at school. Nicholas's heart stopped. When he arrived at Liam's school, rage burned in his chest. Liam sat on the steps, his backpack beside him, his face turned away. Emily was crouched beside him, trying to comfort him. Nicholas knelt down. Liam, what happened? Liam hesitated, biting his lip, then softly said, Some older kids said I was a charity case. Nicholas's blood boiled. Liam clenched his fists. They said my dad didn't want me. That's why he was never there. Nicholas's stomach twisted painfully. This time, he didn't hesitate. He gently took Liam's shoulders, making the boy look at him. They're wrong. His voice was steady, certain. I didn't know about you, Liam. But now that I do, he swallowed hard, I will never leave you again. Liam's eyes shimmered with doubt. Nicholas exhaled, his tone softer. I can't change the past, but I promise you I will fight for the future. Liam hesitated. Then, for the first time, he nodded. It was small, barely noticeable, but for Nicholas, it meant everything. Because in that moment, he realized he couldn't lose his son again. Not now. Not ever. Emily Dawson had spent years teaching herself not to hope. Hope had led to heartbreak. Hope had left her alone, scared, and struggling to survive. And now, Nicholas Carter, the man who had once been her whole world, was trying to prove he belonged in it again. She could see the effort, the way he showed up every day, the way he tried to be a father to Liam, not just a man with money. But was it enough? Or was it just temporary? Because if there was one thing Emily knew for certain, she couldn't survive losing him twice. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Nicholas walked Emily home after picking Liam up from school. Liam had run ahead, eager to show his mother a drawing he had made that day. Emily walked beside Nicholas, arms folded, her expression unreadable. Finally, he broke the silence. Emily, I was a fool. She glanced at him but said nothing. He swallowed. I should have fought harder for you. I should have questioned everything. His voice was raw. I should have found you. Emily stiffened. But I didn't, Nicholas admitted. And because of that, I lost you. I lost Liam. His gaze burned into her. I won't let that happen again. Emily's breath hitched, but she turned away. It's not that simple, Nicholas. He stopped walking. Why not? His voice was low, desperate. Emily faced him, her blue eyes filled with hesitation. Because if I let myself believe you and you walk away again? She exhaled sharply. I won't survive it. Nicholas's chest ached. Then don't believe my words. He stepped closer. Believe my actions. She held his gaze, uncertain. That takes time. Nicholas nodded. Then I'll wait. And for the first time, Emily saw it. The billionaire who once had everything was willing to wait. Nicholas didn't use his wealth to prove himself. He didn't try to buy her trust. Instead, he did the things Emily never expected. He showed up early in the mornings to take Liam to school, learning how to pack a lunchbox for the first time in his life. He stayed late into the evenings, helping Emily cook dinner, badly at first, but improving with time. One day, Emily came home to find Nicholas on the roof, sleeves rolled up, fixing a leak in the ceiling. She had stared up at him, baffled. You could have hired someone to do that. Nicholas wiped the sweat from his brow and smirked. I know, but I wanted to do it myself. Emily didn't know how to respond to that, because this wasn't Nicholas Carter, the untouchable billionaire. This was Nicholas Carter, the man who was trying. And against her better judgment, she felt her heart begin to soften. One night, as Nicholas helped Liam with his homework, Emily stood by the doorway, watching. Liam had once refused to let Nicholas in. Now he was smiling, laughing. Nicholas ruffled Liam's hair, shaking his head. I was never this good at math. Liam grinned. You're a billionaire. You have to be good at math. Nicholas smirked. That's what accountants are for. Liam let out a small laugh and Emily's chest tightened. Because, in that moment, she saw it. Saw the way Nicholas was becoming the father Liam never had. Saw the way he was becoming the man she had once loved. And maybe, just maybe, she was falling for him all over again. The soft glow of fairy lights illuminated the small backyard, casting a golden hue over the carefully decorated space. The scent of freshly baked cake and grilled food filled the air, mixing with the sound of laughter. Genuine, warm, and full of life. It was Liam's birthday. And for the first time in his life, he had both his parents there with him. Nicholas Carter stood in the middle of it all, watching as Liam tore open his gifts with excitement. Emily stood beside him, arms folded, a small smile playing on her lips. Nicholas turned to her, his voice low but full of meaning. He's happy. Emily glanced up at him. He is. For a brief moment their eyes met, and there it was. The connection that had never truly faded, the love that had always been there, buried beneath years of pain. And tonight it felt like they had finally found their way back. As the guests began to leave, Nicholas pulled Emily aside. Under the soft glow of the backyard lights, he took a slow breath, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Emily's eyes widened. Nicholas exhaled. Emily, I lost you once because I was blind. Because I believed the wrong things. Because I let other people make decisions for me. He took a step closer. I refuse to lose you again. Emily's breath hitched. Nicholas opened the box, revealing a ring, simple, elegant, timeless. I'm not asking because of responsibility, not because we share a son, but because I love you, Emily. His voice shook slightly. I always have, and I always will. A tear slipped down Emily's cheek. Nicholas swallowed. Marry me. Silence stretched between them. Then she smiled, a real, genuine, breathtaking smile, and softly she whispered, yes.